to begin in child's pose, so you don't need your blocker strap at the moment. All right, so taking the knees a little bit wider than the edge, or wide to the edge of your yoga mat, we're sending the hips back to the heels, and we're just going to rest our forehead down toward the floor. Just letting the arms become heavy into the ground below you, letting that forehead melt, letting the hips drop down. Taking a deep inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Taking a couple more breaths, trying to melt into the floor a little more with each exhale. And then begin rocking the forehead from side to side. Just letting that neck become loose, bringing some movement into all those little bones of the neck, the muscles of the neck. And then finding a moment of stillness here as you take one deep inhale. And on your exhale, press your way up into your tabletop, walking the knees under the hips and getting those wrists underneath the shoulders. And let's take a couple rounds of cat-cow here, dropping that belly down. Inhale to look up. And then exhale, rounding through the spine, looking down. Taking a couple more here, just working that movement with your own breath. And then pressing the hips back toward the heels. Let's walk the hands up about halfway so that the chest comes up and you can look forward. Bringing the right hand behind the head, we'll twist to tap that elbow down to the forearm. And then inhale to lift and look up underneath. Exhale, twist to tap. Inhale, lift to look up. And let's take that about 3 more times here. And then releasing that right hand to the ground, floating that left hand up behind the head, we'll twist to tap. And then inhale to lift and look up. Two more. And then pressing back up into your tabletop, we're going to take an exercise that I love. It's called rib hula hooping. So what we're trying to do is create a circular motion of the rib cage. So imagine dropping that chest down, keep your elbows straight. And then we're going to shift the rib cage off to the left. We're going to come up and around, pressing that rib cage up toward the ceiling, and then down to the right and drop that belly down. Taking a couple of rounds here, I'm just going to try to face you because that sometimes helps. So dropping the chest down, shifting over, pressing up through, back around, and down. And then find a moment of stillness here, recentering in that tabletop, and we'll take the other side. So shifting your rib cage off to the left, drop down toward the floor, keeping those elbows straight. Shift the rib cage over to the right, and then press up to the ceiling as you come back around. This is challenging to isolate those movements, so be patient with yourself. This gets easier as you do it a few times. And then find some stillness here in this tabletop. And let's take a couple of rounds of cat-cow here now, just noticing the difference in the skill movements compared to when you first did this. Great job. Okay, so stacking one block on top of the other. We're going to come into our little underarm stretch here. And the whole objective of this one too is to get some extension in the mid-back. So we're going to place our elbows down on the yoga blocks. Send the hips back as you dive the chest down between those upper arms, creating an arch in that mid-back. Bending those elbows, inhaling to take up space, and then exhaling to drop that chest downward a little more. Continue to breathe here. And then pressing up onto those elbows, we can move your blocks off to the side. So the choice is yours. You can come either to sitting on a yoga block or a blanket or on the floor, whatever feels good. So we're just coming to sit on your block, crisscrossing the feet over each other. If it feels more comfortable to extend the legs out in front of you, you can do that. Either way, we're trying to find a nice long spine here, sitting up tall, sitting up proud, trying to soften those shoulders down and away from the ears. Finding your breath here. On your next exhale, go ahead and draw the chin down to the chest, lacing the fingers up behind the head, gently pressing down. So not pressing down too much, you're just kind of letting the weight of gravity and of your hands just apply a little overpressure to the back of the head. You don't want to aggravate anything going down into the shoulder blade, so if it is, just come out of this. And then release those hands. We're going to lift that chest up nice and proud as you inhale, look up toward the ceiling, stretching out the front of the neck. And then releasing to come back to a neutral head, dropping your left ear down to your left shoulder. We can take that hand over top just to apply a little overpressure here. Relax that shoulder down and away from the ear. Maybe you reach those fingertips down to the floor below you. So we're creating length throughout that entire side of the neck. All of those neck muscles that like to get tense when we're cold or stressed out. On your exhale, go ahead and release that stretch, taking the other side, dropping that right ear down toward the right shoulder, reaching that hand up and over, grasping onto the top of the head for a gentle stretch. Go ahead and relax the shoulder away from the ear. And if you wish, you can reach those fingertips down toward the floor. Find your breath here. And then release, coming back up to center, taking your gaze over the left shoulder and then over the right shoulder, just not pushing anything here. We're just trying to get a little gentle movement in all of the planes of the neck. Last one here before we meet back in center. Aligning that spine, once again, sitting up tall. Go ahead and lace your fingers together in front of you. Exhale, press the hands down toward the floor as you straighten the elbows. Inhaling, lifting those palms up to the ceiling. Once we come overhead, though, we want to draw that chin in and stack the ears over the shoulders. So that's creating some nice spinal alignment. Exhale, as you keep that head drawn back, go ahead and release those hands down by your side. So let's take that a couple of more times, working the breath to the movement. Inhale as you lift up, retract, and then exhale, lower down. Inhale, lift up, retract the neck, and exhale, lower down. And then let's take one more. As you lift up, we're rotating on the exhale to the left. So kickstanding that hand behind you, still sitting tall through the head so we can stack each vertebrae on top of itself. If you want a little more of that rotation mobility, you can gently take the gaze over that left shoulder. And then exhale, release those arms up overhead as you take the other side, still sitting up tall and proud here. Breathing into the rib cage, so you're expanding that rib cage all the way around. And then exhale, release into that twist a little more. Maybe taking the gaze over that right shoulder. And then release to come back up to center, arms overhead. We're planting that left hand down to the ground, reaching that right arm up and over for a side body stretch. The trick here is that we don't want to collapse forward, but rather we're opening up across the chest. And maybe you can take that gaze up underneath the arm. And then release to come back up through center, taking the other side, gently pressing the floor away from you. Opening up across the shoulder, taking the gaze up and underneath the arm. Releasing to come back up through center. Go ahead and sweep those arms up overhead, taking the hands to heart center. Finding a moment here to breathe. Great job. So coming off your yoga block or coming back onto the hands and knees for our tabletop, you can move your blocks off to the top of your mat here. So we're taking a couple of cat-cow here just to kind of reset the spine, bring some new movements. And then finding a moment of stillness here, drawing that belly button up into the spine so that we flatten out the low back. Keeping that core engagement, go ahead and walk the fingers forward. We want the index finger to face the front of your mat and spread those fingertips out. Tuck the toes, and keeping that core engagement, we're going to send the hips up and back into our downward facing dog. First one of the practice, so we're keeping those knees bent, spine is long. Try to imagine that you're drawing your shoulder blades down and back, or almost like you're sliding your shoulder blades into your back pockets. So that's what we mean when we say relax your shoulders away from the ears. Taking your gaze up between the hands, go ahead and march your feet up to meet your hands at the top of your mat. We'll inhale, come up to a flat back, hands come up to the shins. We're looping shoulders down and back, chest is proud here. And then adding in that little cervical retraction, drawing the chin in to create length in the back of the neck. Taking a moment here to inhale and exhale. On your next inhale, sweep those arms up overhead, lacing the fingers up top, index finger points up to the ceiling. Exhale, baby back bend here. And then inhale to lift it back up. Stepping that left foot back, we're opening up into our warrior two, our first warrior two of the practice. So finding that footing below you, so the heel of the front foot bisects the arch of the back foot, so coming into this T position. Reaching those fingertips out nice and long. Try to soften the shoulders down and away from the ears. Spiraling your palms forward up to the ceiling. And how far can you get them to go back? And then releasing, rotating the palms down and back. So we're just flowing between these rotational movements of the shoulder, forearm, the wrist. And then release to come back into that warrior two. We're flipping the front palm up to the ceiling. Exhale, reverse warrior, back hand to back knee, really reaching those fingertips up to the ceiling. Try to sink down into that front leg again. Finding your breath here as you come back up into our warrior two. Taking front elbow to front knee, now we're reaching that back hand up to the ceiling. Try to soften the shoulder away from the ear here and find your breath. Find that stability, that support in the leg. And then release to come back up into your warrior two. We're going to straighten that front leg, and let's heel toe that back foot up just a little bit, coming into our triangle pose. So bumping the hips toward the back of your mat, but not hanging out there too much. So we want to engage the outer hip. Reaching those fingertips out side to side. Go ahead and hinge kind of forward, but out to the side of the hips. Reaching those fingertips forward, trying to keep that front knee straight. When you feel like you've kind of hit that point, we can rotate that palm forward, bring it to the inside of the knee, and then bring that back in up to the ceiling for triangle pose. So in triangle pose, a lot of times we think that it's, how far can you go down to get the stretch in the leg? But with focus on the neck and shoulders, we can actually reach those fingertips up and trying to drop that shoulder down away from the ear. Okay, so just a couple of different ways to approach triangle pose. And then using those core muscles to lift you up and out, go ahead and step off that back foot to come up to the top of your mat. Hands come to heart center. Woo. That back arm was definitely working some posture muscles there. Taking a deep breath in and exhale. On your next inhale, go ahead and bring those arms up overhead. Exhale, hinging forward at the hips. Hands come to the shins for a flat back. Exhale, bending those knees, taking the hands to the floor, step it back into our high plank, really pressing the floor away from you, engaging all of those shoulder blade muscles. And then send the hips up and back, downward facing dog. Knees can be bent here, but we're going to pedal the heels out, alternating between right and left. Taking the gaze up between the hands, go ahead and walk your feet back up to meet your hands at the top of your mat. Coming into flat back once again. Inhale and exhale. On your next inhale, sweep those arms up overhead. Go ahead and lace those fingers up top again, but we want to take that funny feeling grip, so the opposite way of what you did before. Index finger points up to the ceiling. Exhale, little back bend here. And then inhale to lift up. I'm going to switch around so that you can see me here, but we're stepping that right foot to the back of your mat now, sinking down into that front thigh. Finding that balance as you reach those fingertips out to relax the shoulders away from the ears, drawing that belly button in for a warrior two. Taking the hands down that front middle finger. We're just going to rotate the palms up and back, and then down and back. Just flowing between these two motions, really exploring what you feel in the shoulder, the elbow, the forearm, wrist. And then finding the palms facing downward. Let's flip the front palm up to the ceiling now, taking back hand to back knee. Reaching those fingertips up to the ceiling for reverse warrior as you continue to sink down into that front thigh. Coming back up to center here, taking that front elbow to front knee, reaching that right hand up for our extended side angle, dropping that right shoulder down and away from the ear. Coming back up into your warrior two, hands can come to hips as you straighten that front leg. Go ahead and heel toe that back foot up so that we shorten that stance a little bit. Bumping the hips toward the back of your mat. We're going to engage that outer hip, extending the arms out long. Begin to hinge forward and to the side of the hips here. So this is kind of as far as my hips let me go. So once we get there, you're going to take that front hand inside the knee and then reach that right hand up to the ceiling. Okay, so we're here. Imagine lifting up through those fingertips. That's going to engage all of these core muscles. Still getting a stretch in that front thigh, maybe. And then with that arm that's up, we're going to drop that shoulder away from the ear. Coming back up into your outstretched arm, step off of your back leg, up to the top of your mat, hands to heart center here. Finding a moment of stillness. Shifting your weight onto the right leg, we're taking tree pose here. So that sole of the foot can either come to the inner shin, excuse me, or the inner thigh. Wherever you are in your practice, we're pressing that knee to the back of your mat to open up the hip. But what we want to check into here is the position of the arm. So when you feel stable and ready, we can open up, growing those branches out tall. So our arms are in this wide position. We want to drop those shoulders down. Find your breath here. Lots happening in this pose. If you need to hold on to something for a little balance, you can. And then bringing those hands to heart center, releasing the foot to the floor, shaking off that leg. Shifting your weight onto that left foot now, taking the sole of the right to the inner shin or the inner thigh here. Gently pressing that knee away from you to the back of your mat. Finding your drishti or your focal point in front of you. Go ahead and reach those fingertips up as you grow those branches out wide. Soften those shoulders as you find your breath. Releasing the hands to heart center, releasing the foot to the floor. Go ahead and shake that leg off a little bit. On your next inhale, sweep those arms up overhead. Exhale, hinge forward at the hips. Inhale, come to flat back. And then exhale, release the hands to the floor, stepping back right foot. Finding a nice low lunge here. You can use your blocks to bring the floor up to you. Finding this breath, this nice proud chest. Placing the block on the inner arch of the left foot, rooting that right hand down on the block. We'll inhale, take a little twist, reaching that left arm up to the ceiling. And then releasing that twist. Go ahead and lower your knee down to the ground and untuck the toe. We'll inhale, sweep those arms up overhead. Exhale, cactus your arms, dropping those elbows down toward the hips as you lift the chest up. Exhale, release the hands overhead. And we're going to sweep the arms down so that you can lace the fingers behind your hips. Pressing those fingertips down toward the ground, we are pinching those shoulder blades together to expand across the chest. If it's in your practice, you can begin to hinge forward slightly at the hips, taking those fingertips up toward the ceiling. And then releasing the hands to the floor, moving your block off to the side of your mat. Tuck the toe, hover the knee, step it back, high plank. Press that floor away from you. Step your right foot up between your hands. You might need to kind of scoot it up there. Sinking down into your low lunge. You can use those blocks to press into to lift the chest up. Go ahead and flip that block inside the arch of the foot. You're going to place your hand on that block. Inhale, sweep up, taking a gentle twist. Go ahead and release that twist, lowering that back leg to the floor. Inhale, sweeping the arms up overhead. And then exhale to cactus the arms down by your side, taking that chest up to the ceiling. Exhale, release overhead. Inhale, exhale, taking the hands down by your side, lacing the fingers behind your hips, pressing the floor down away from you, and looping those shoulders down and back to open up the chest. Find a couple of breaths here. And if you feel pretty balanced, and this is in your practice, you can take a little hip hinge forward. Those are tips up, up, up. And then releasing the hands to the floor, you can move your blocks. We're going to step the right foot back so that we can come into tabletop and then into this tall kneeling position, bringing the blocks back between the knee and the ankle. Okay, so standing up nice and tall here. Let's loop those shoulders down and back. Spiral those palms to face forward. Go ahead and extend your fingers back toward the blocks. So you're not really hanging out on the blocks. You're just kind of using the blocks as a point of contact. Where the magic happens in this pose is that you are imagining you have a string attached to your sternum, your breastbone, that's pulling you up to the ceiling. So this isn't a back bend at the low back. It's actually a back bend at the mid back. Head is kind of in line, so we're not dropping it back. And then take one more breath here. And then exhale, release. Go ahead and sit your hips down onto the heels, moving your blocks off to the side. Okay. Coming down into this saddle seated position. So we're extending the legs out wide. Okay. Even if they're here, that's okay. We just want the knees and the toes pointed upward. So sitting up nice and tall here, we're going to walk the fingertips forward, hinging at the hips, keeping that chest lifted. Finding a moment here to settle. And then walking those fingertips up, let's take that right foot into the left shin. Bringing that hand, placing the back of the hand inside the knee, floating that right arm up and over for a nice side body stretch here. And then releasing to come back up, swapping those feet out. Taking the back of the hand inside the knee, reaching left fingertips up and over. Gaze goes underneath that arm. Breathing deeply into the ribcage. And then release to come back up through center here. So let's take a couple of wrist rolls here for a moment. I'm going the opposite direction, just preparing our wrists for a little bit of movement, some recovery from those downward dogs. And then we're opening the fist and closing them, squeezing all of the fingers as hard as you can. Open and close. Feels good after a long day of shoveling. And then release the hands to the thighs here. We're going to shrug the shoulders up toward the ears. So when I'm going up toward the ears, I'm not going up and forward. I'm actually going up and back. Okay, so holding for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release. We're going to do that 4 more times. Shrugging those shoulders up for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release. Up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release. And 1 more. 3, 2, 1. And release. So that kind of activates those upper traps, those muscles that like to tighten up when our neck acts up. So actually activating them kind of breaks that cycle, that neurological response that's happening so that you can actually relax. Okay. So let's work our way down onto our bellies here. Okay. So laying flat on your belly. We're going to place the hands underneath the shoulders. Forehead to the floor. We'll inhale, peel that chest up, looking forward. And then exhale, release to come back down to the floor, forehead to the floor. Inhale, peel that chest up. So imagine that you're creating this wave-like motion throughout the entire spine that ends at the top of the head. Taking a couple more waves here. And then releasing forehead to the floor. Extending that left arm out to the side, bending your elbow. Okay. We're going to press into the right hand, kicking that right leg up and over. So a nice stretch throughout the front of the shoulder here. You can let your head rest down on the floor to really try to relax into that pose. The toe does not need to touch the floor here. Don't want any tweaks in the back. One more inhale and exhale. On your next inhale, we're going to rotate out of this, but let that hand, that left arm come up off the floor. So we're trying to activate, 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 and then finally releasing that hand to the ground below you. Great job. Other side. Right arm goes out to the side, elbow is bent, palm faces the floor. Pressing into that left hand, we're going to kick the left leg up and over. You can let the forehead and the ear rest down on the ground below you. Finding that breath, finding that relaxation into this twist. And then releasing that pose. As you release, we're going to hover that right arm up, 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 off the floor for a little activation before pressing that hand back underneath the shoulder. Okay? So coming up into our baby cobra, we are peeling that chest off of the floor, pulling the floor toward you with the hands and moving the chest forward between the hands. Continue to breathe here. Gaze is down to the edge of your yoga mat. And then on your next exhale, go ahead and release everything down to the floor, taking the hands down by your side, palms face the floor, feeling the forehead, the shoulders, the hands, and the toes up, really pressing through the balls of the feet toward the back of your mat, keeping that gaze downward. Begin to pulse the hands up toward the ceiling. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release down to the floor. Take your hands out to the side in a T position, palms face the floor. We're going to peel forehead, shoulders, hands, and toes off once again. Holding, breathing, gazes downward, and then pulse the hands up for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release down to the floor with control. And then finally taking the arms up overhead in a Y position, so your hands will be off the mat, almost like you're making a big Y with your body. Roll the thumbs up to the ceiling. We're going to peel the forehead, hands, chest, and toes off the floor, pushing the pubic bone down into the ground, sliding the shoulder blades down into the back pockets. This one's the hardest to pulse up for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release it all down to the floor. Great job. Taking your hands underneath the shoulders, we're going to press it up into tabletop and send it back into our child's pose for a moment. Just letting everything rest and breathe. Pressing it up into tabletop, we're going to swing around, taking the hip down to the floor so we can extend those legs out long in front of you. Okay. Taking a couple of neck rolls here just to get some movement, some blood flow. One direction and then the other. And then finding some stillness here as you grow tall through the crown of the head. Exhale, hinging forward at the hips, taking the hands either to the thighs, the backs, the knees, maybe the shins. Keeping the chest proud and lifted here. And then go ahead and walk the hands back up the shins, taking that left knee into the chest, just hugging it nice and close, sitting up tall. Go ahead and crisscross your foot over that knee. Kickstanding your left hand back behind you. We're going to reach the right hand up to the ceiling. And on your exhale, go ahead and hook your elbow to the outside of that left knee. Key here is to sit up nice and tall. Finding some breaths here, coming into that twist slightly more with every exhale. And then releasing that twist, go ahead and extend that leg out long in front of you, shaking off those legs. Now hugging right knee into chest. Let's sit up tall, sit up proud as you crisscross that foot over. Kickstanding that hand behind you, reaching the left one up, 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 up to the ceiling. And then exhale, taking that elbow to the outside of the knee for a gentle twist. Keeping all of the vertebrae stacked on top of each other. Breathing into that rib cage, and then exhaling to release into that twist a little deeper, not from the pose. Now you can exhale, release from the pose, extending those legs out long, kind of bouncing the knees up and down just to bring some movement back into the hips. And then bringing the soles of the feet down to the floor, scooting our bottoms toward the heels, grasping onto the backs of the thighs here. Let's loop shoulders down and back, sitting up tall, sitting up proud. Keeping that length in the spine now, we can reach the hands forward. As you exhale, begin to lower, lower, lower with control all the way down to the floor until you feel like you can't hold it anymore. We're going to hold there for a couple of breaths. Inviting that shake, inviting that core activation, and then finally releasing down to the ground and just letting go. One deep inhale and exhale, letting it all release. Great job. Okay, so very fitting, but we are going to pretend like we are making snow angels here. So resting the backs of the hands on the floor, palms face up to the ceiling. We're going to inhale, bringing the hands along the floor, up and overhead. And then exhale, lowering those hands back down by your side. Let's take this a few times, coordinating your own breath to your own movement. And last one here. Releasing all the way down by your side. Let's come over and lay on your right side. We'll actually do both sides, so whatever way you can see me better. If it's more comfortable to use a block to place your forehead or the side of your head on to keep that neck nice and neutral, I like to do that. Stacking one knee on top of the other and stacking both palms on top of each other. We're going to inhale, open up that upper hand, taking a gentle twist, and then releasing to come back. Inhale, lift to open, and then exhale to release and come back. So of course, not pushing through any discomfort. A little mantra is go to the pain, not through the pain. To go to the pain, but back off a little bit. And last one here. Great job. We're going to roll over onto our other side, moving intentionally, moving calmly. And then stacking one knee on top of the other, stacking one palm on top of the other. We'll inhale to open up, taking a twist. You might notice that one side feels a little better than the other. Not unusual. Sometimes we have mobility differences on one side. And then release. You can move your block off to the side as you come onto your back here. Okay, so taking bridge pose. We're pressing the hands into the ground, pressing those hips up to the ceiling, trying not to let the knees flare out too much. If you would like a chest opener here, you can lace those fingers underneath the hips. Just kind of walk the shoulder blades together to open up. And then gently press those fingertips down toward the heels. Finding your breath here, really squeezing those glutes, trying to get those hips lifted. And then release the hands, lowering down one spinal segment at a time until the tailbone is the last thing that comes down. Now coming into our Shavasana, our final resting pose, you can grab a blanket or an eye cover, whatever you need for your time here. Whenever you're ready, you can extend one leg out and then the other. Allowing the hands to fall where they feel comfortable, maybe by your side, maybe one hand on the belly or chest. And wherever you are, making those little adjustments to the body so that you can relax completely. And once you're there, close the eyes if they aren't already. Smoothing out the forehead, allowing the eyelids to become heavy, letting the eyes sink back into their sockets, releasing the jaw, and relaxing the tongue and the mouth. Releasing tension in the throat, the neck, the shoulders, making that neck nice and long. Directing your attention now to the chest and that heart space. Letting go of anything there that isn't serving you. And opening that space up for the flow of love. Taking your attention down to the belly, the low back, the hips, and the pelvis. Continue to let go over and over again with every exhale. Scanning down the thighs, the calves, down to the heels, feeling their heaviness in the ground below you. Relaxing all 10 toes and the soles of the feet. Scanning the body from the soles of the feet all the way to the top of the head. Pausing momentarily at areas that you feel like they might need more attention, more care, more breath. And then release that tension with your next exhale, melting down into the floor completely. Let's take a couple of moments here with you, your breath. And when you feel ready, begin to make small movements with the toes and the fingers. Maybe softly bending the elbows and straightening the elbows, bending both knees. And moving with ease, you can roll over onto your side. Keeping the eyes closed, press yourself up into a seated position. Sitting tall as you root down into the ground below you, growing tall through the crown of the head. Bringing your hands to heart center. I'm so grateful for this connection that we've made this evening. So thankful for being able to show up on our mats together. And may you have peace in your thoughts and your